Tonight on Free Minds TV, police pull over an ambulance and harass the paramedics while they're en route to the hospital. Good Samaritans charged with obstructing justice when they attempt to mow the lawn and fix potholes on public property. More insanity coming out of the nanny state in UK and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV. And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV. It is episode 113. As always, it's Toby here with you.
And Nick.
We have a little bit of an interesting show going on today. It's actually a one-camera shoot, so we might be able to do a little bit of fancy camera work and make it look like we have multiple cameras in the studio, but we're facing some technical difficulties and we are behind the clock. We've got to move out of the studio, so we thought it was important to bring a new show to the viewers regardless. But if you're noticing a quality difference between this and the rest of the shows, well, that's why. Anyways,
and that just means you're very perceptive.
Very perceptive. Anyways, it'll be a great show. We do have a ton of stuff to get into here. We're going to be focusing in on some insanity that's going on here in the United States. Normally we're bringing you some stuff from the nanny state where they're really cracking down on people, micromanaging people's lives, and we do have a couple of those stories as well. But I wanted to start off tonight's show by talking about something that's going on here in the U.S. And it's starting with harassment of Good Samaritans trying to make their city, make their towns look nicer because, well, you know, the public officials don't always keep up with the work, and some Good Samaritans have tried to go out and make the city look better because the officials aren't. Well, this first story is coming out of Ohio, where a Good Samaritan has pled not guilty after he was arrested for attempting to mow a public lawn. He was in Sandusky, Ohio. He noticed that the lawn was over a foot high in Sandusky Central Park, and he decided to take his lawnmower out there and mow the grass. Well, the police came and told him to get off the lawnmower and cease mowing the grass. He asked, well, when are you guys going to mow it? Well, they said, we'll mow it in our due time. He said, well, can't I just mow it, make it look nice? They said no and promptly arrested him. Now, he is facing charges. He's pleading not guilty, but who knows what will happen. A Good Samaritan trying to just make his town look better, and the police take action and say no.
It's stunning because when the city isn't doing its job and citizens are simply trying to make their city look nicer, they get jumped all over. And sometimes they'll make excuses saying that, well, the city faces liability. If, say, you're mowing whatever the city park is, you throw a rock into somebody's car. But generally speaking, what they're concerned about is not making themselves look bad. The city looks really bad if a private citizen goes out on their own time with their own money and does a better job and a more consistent job than the city does, especially when a lot of times the city employees are making pretty good money with benefits and pensions and all that.
It's just absolutely pathetic. I mean, a guy taking his own lawnmower, his own gas, trying to go and mow Central Park because the grass is over a foot long. I mean, you know what happens when grass gets long? There you get ticks and other stuff in the grass that the kids get when they're playing in it. And
you can't see what's in the grass either. I mean, you could step on a broken bottle or something like that.
This man taking matters into his own hands and being charged with it. It's absolutely disgusting. Well, moving right along to another part of Ohio, this coming out of from Akron, Ohio, or Akron, I don't know how to pronounce it. Akron, Ohio.
That would be Akron.
Well, this is an 81-year-old James Stacy is facing similar charges. This after the 81-year-old noticed that there was a pothole outside of his house and the city was supposed to be coming in and fixing it. Well, he noticed that they do shoddy jobs in the past, and he decided that he'd take matters into his own hands and help them out a little bit. He decided to go out there and chip away at some of the broken pavement and try to make things look a little bit better, make it easier for the road crew to come and fix it when it was their turn to put on new pavement, because a lot of the time they just go slap some new asphalt over the old pothole without cleaning up the old debris, and it makes things unsafe and more of a shoddy job. Well, the 81-year-old is now facing charges and faces up to 90 days in jail for simply trying to help out.
For simply fixing a road. I mean, that's what he's doing. And I know that here in Keene, New Hampshire, a lot of the roads are in pretty rough shape. So I wouldn't be surprised if people here wanted to fill in a pothole. The reason more people don't do it is the fact that you can go to jail if you actually go ahead and fill in that pothole and make the road a little bit more passable.
Right, and now this poor 81-year-old could be going to jail. Should 81-year-old people who are just trying to help their city or town look better, be facing jail time. This isn't America anymore, Nick. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty disgusting. Anyway, speaking of America, I believe you have a story about the Obama infatuation. There's certainly a love for him going on in this country. What's the latest, Nick?
Well, the latest is really just a blog article from an actual reporter talking about how the media seems to be giving Obama a lot of good press. They're not being very critical of his administration, and a lot of people would say that most of the press outlets out there are not being very objective either. They're pointing out here, among other things, that twice as much of the press coverage is focusing on Obama's personal charisma as they did with George Bush. So twice as much of it covers the man as opposed to the policy in this case. So they're not so interested in actually looking at his policies, what he's actually proposing. They'd rather talk about what a good speaker he is, what a great leader he is, which doesn't really do anybody a service. One of the reasons that a free press is useful is because it gives people an objective view of what's going on, and it tends to allow them to have a better understanding of the world. But if the press is going to focus on trivial things like the president's haircut or what kind of dog the family decided to buy, as opposed to, say, his tax policies, you're not really getting very well informed now, are you? So, you know, the press, not surprisingly, there are some critical outlets out there, Fox News, but hey, are they really objective? I mean, most of the critical outlets out there are very biased in the other direction, so there's not really any good major news agency out there taking an objective look at what the Obama administration is actually doing.
Right, and the other thing that I've noticed is public poll numbers are essentially doing the exact same thing.
But which follows which? Do the poll numbers follow how the media reports, or do the media reports actually follow what the public thinks? I think the media tends to lead public opinion. If the media is taking a very favorable view of an administration and is going to overlook its shortcomings and its faults, and is going to overstate the good things that they're actually doing, then of course more people are likely to favor them, because most people don't go and do primary source research. They don't question what they see on the news. The news must be the truth.
Well, I've still got to say, it looks like the change we got with Obama is not the policy. The policy has stayed exactly the same. The change we're getting are the poll numbers and how the media and the public are treating him. He's doing the same exact stuff.
Well, the rhetoric has changed. He's saying
some different things, but he's doing different things. The policy is exactly the same thing. He's still fighting wars of aggression. He's still doing all these horrible things with wiretapping and FISA, creating a new internet czar. But public opinion and the media still love him. So I think the change we get is the perception and whether people agree with his policy, even though it's essentially the same as the Bush administration.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that the big news this past week was GM filing for bankruptcy. Now the United States government is a primary shareholder in GM. But nobody in the media seems to be seriously questioning whether the president is overstepping his bounds, whether that's unconstitutional. Whereas if George Bush had proposed a program that was so overbroad that it overstepped the Constitution in that way, you better bet that the media would have been asking those questions. And they still should be asking them today. I'm not saying they should have let George Bush, get a cakewalk. I'm saying that they should hold every administration accountable and actually report the facts, whether they're flattering or not.
Well, I agree with you, Nick, but unfortunately most of the public really seems to have an infatuation with this guy. But it's time to look at what he's actually doing and base your opinion from that. And what he's doing, well, if you didn't like what George Bush was doing, you're really not going to like Obama because, well, if anything, he's been amping it up, not slowing it down as promised. The change, well, is people's perception as far as I can tell. Anyways, we do have to move on. I wanted to go over to Kansas City, where there is a Liberty Memorial. This is a big old phallic structure to, show how great liberty is in America. And it's prominently posed there to show that liberty and justice for all people. Well, the Liberty Memorial Association is now wanting to encircle the Liberty Monument with a giant fence to keep hoodlums and other people out. Well, does liberty jive with a giant fence to keep people away from the Liberty Monument? It seems like a little bit of a contradiction to me, and they're spending $1.4 million as the proposed budget for this to protect the Liberty Monument from people exercising their liberties. They're saying this because hoodlums go and hang out there and loiter there. Maybe even some drug deals could take place there. So they need to erect a giant fence to keep people away from this gigantic phallic structure.
I'm not surprised. Obviously, it's hypocrisy in a way. It's going against what the spirit of the structure supposedly represents. But then you have to say that most of American politics and American society are not in line with the principles of freedom and liberty. They claim to be, but
just like this.
So it is representative of American liberty because it's deeply flawed.
It's deeply flawed. If you're putting a fence around the Liberty Monument to keep people from exercising their liberties and going up to the monument, you're not trusting the people, well, you don't really have all that much liberty, do you? So I guess you're right. It fits perfectly. Build your giant $1 million fence. All right, anyways, we do got to move on. Well, we probably can't do anything about this situation. Those useless bureaucrats are going to do what they're going to do. Maybe you can at least tell the fools in Washington what you think, and we try to allow people to do that each week with the Downsizer Dispatch. What do we got this week, Nick?
Well, this week's Downsizer Dispatch is pointing out, it's questioning whether most American adults are grown up or not. And they are sort of questioning whether they are. They're pointing out that most Americans are probably going to be focused on pretty trivial news. They're going to be focused on the debates going on around President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, as if that really matters. It's mostly going to be debates about personality, background, things that don't really matter. The fact is, any nominee to the Supreme Court, whether it's being made by a Republican or a Democratic president, they're likely to be pretty bad on the Constitution at this point because both parties are so far from any kind of constitutional ideal. And the Supreme Court really just serves to interpret the Constitution out of any real force or meaning. So let's give up on the Supreme Court. It was lost a long time ago. What DownsizeDC.org is encouraging people to do is, if they want to try to pressure politicians in Washington to respect the Constitution, they can't count on the Supreme Court to do it at this point, and they're recommending that people sign up for the Downsizer Dispatch and contact their elected officials in Washington to tell them how they feel and to encourage their officials to say, oppose cap and trade or oppose bailouts. You can also urge your representatives to vote for honest money, which is gold and silver as currency. And the Fed Act is a big deal on Capitol Hill right now. It was introduced by Representative Ron Paul, and it's got quite a bit of traction. It's got many, many co-sponsors, and there's actually a chance of it surviving passage through the House, however slim that might seem. So go to downsizedc.org and encourage your representatives, your elected officials in Washington, to do the right thing for once and actually obey the limits of their office.
Well, I'd encourage people to do so. I know I'm signed up for the Downsizer Dispatch on a weekly basis. They send me stuff and get to contact those
At least
schools in
weekly. I mean,
Washington.
sometimes it's every couple of days, but it's not like a spam list.
Anyways, it is a great way
inbox.
to at least do a little bit for liberty in this country. At least tell the idiots in Washington what you think. They probably won't listen, but at least you can annoy them with those pesky emails. They really do have to count them. I mean, someone's got to actually count each email they receive.
It can
so
swing
if they get
votes,
enough,
too.
It can swing votes.
It can make a difference if enough people sign up, but currently they need a lot more people on the list before it starts making a real difference.
Absolutely. Well, we do have to take a little break, but when we come back, we have a whole lot more. We're actually going to have some video footage from Andrew Carroll, who is protesting marijuana as a civil disobedience here where we're broadcasting from in Keene, New Hampshire. We've got the footage of him turning himself in to prison, or jail, I guess, because he refused to pay the $420 fine. We're also going to be getting into some paramedics who were held up by the cops and a whole lot more. All when we come back. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you by FreeKeene.com. FreeKeene.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeene.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeene.com.
Am I on? Am I on?
You're on.
Hey, do I talk now? Do I talk now? I'm Gardner Goldsmith.
She's here.
And
I think she's up by where they're doing the show.
you're watching Free Minds TV. Open your mind, baby. Tell others to do the same.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It's Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, we've got to move along. We've got a lot to get to and not much time left. I'd like to invite the viewers first to log on to our website, though, freemindstv.com. From there, you can get all the archives of the shows, the radio side of the show, the blogs that we put up, and a whole lot more. freemindstv.com. We are going to be broadcasting live from PorkFest 2009 on June the 25th. We're going to be there with a whole bunch of crew members are going up there, and as soon as we get up there and get things set up, we will be live on the internet. So tune into freemindstv.com on June the 25th. We'll probably be going live somewhere in the afternoon around 3 or so. We're going to actually have a live show there at about 6:30 p.m. So thank you so much for the people who made this possible. There's a few different people donated for us to get the equipment in order to go live. So thanks a lot. If you want to help out, freemindstv.com. All right, moving right along. I saw a video on the internet that was extremely disturbing this week, Nick, and it had to do with some paramedics trying to transport a patient to the hospital and being pulled over by the police. Now, you'd think that the police would have seen that they had someone in the back of the ambulance that desperately needed medical attention and would have done everything they could to let them go, to let them get on their way.
Usually, well, it's actually illegal where this happened in the state of Oklahoma for anyone to interfere with paramedics when they're actually discharging their duties.
Well, they were doing that. Apparently, the police were upset that the ambulance cut them off. It seems more like to me, well, why were the police officers not yielding to the ambulance? Do they have somewhere more important to go? Well, apparently not. They only had all they had to do was harass the ambulance drivers. And so what they did is they pulled over the ambulance drivers, started questioning them, and then actually ended up putting one of them in a chokehold. Don't take my word for it. Let's go to the video.
This is me. This highway patrolman pulled my mom's ambulance over because he's mad we didn't pull over, and he's trying to arrest the police, the EMT, from taking my mother to the hospital. This is me.
I've been going hot over here to help the county out. You understand?
Yes, I do. Can you call it regular, sir?
Understand me? You were under arrest.
Okay.
You were under arrest. You get in there.
Press start for assault and travel penalty. Which is a state law.
Hey!
Mama! What is this in here? Hey, man! You're not doing that. Damn, we just run away. Let go. Let's go. They gonna do it anyway. You go down. They gonna do it anyway, man. You got an actor.
What? Calm down.
It ain't him. It's him right here. This one's trying to be all right.
Now listen to me. I just told you you're under arrest. You get the patient to the hospital.
I'm just in here. That's my wife, man. Come on. Talk to me. That's handed at the hospital. That's the hospital, man. It's crazy, man. I'm not breaking no law. I'm not breaking no law. I just want my wife to get.
So as you can see there, I mean, putting an ambulance driver, an EMT, in a chokehold while he's got a patient in the back of the ambulance, telling him he's under arrest, then eventually letting him go, and they did go about
Apparently
their way.
They didn't push their luck too much.
No, they didn't push
the
their luck too
paramedic was
much.
a large man, though.
Yeah, he did fight back a little there. I mean, for good reason. He had a patient in the back of his ambulance. I mean, if they're going to arrest him, what happens to the patient here? I mean, the police officers definitely not caring about the patient's livelihood. They're more annoyed that they were cut off by an ambulance here. So far, there are no charges being pressed on any of the police officers, or as far as I know, the EMTs. This is still an ongoing investigation at this point. None of them have been even suspended, and right now, the Captain Chris West, which is the spokesman of the police department, says that they're investigating and more will come out in the future. But, you know, doesn't seem like much is going to happen.
I do know that the video went viral. I think the last I knew, it was #2 on YouTube. So it is getting out there. So with enough public pressure, sometimes things do actually
Well, they're not
happen
even releasing the names of the police officers in so far. But anyways, disgusting work of the police. And just for an update, the woman who was in the back of the ambulance did make it to the hospital, and she is okay. So some good news, at least, coming from that. All right, moving along, we got one more story we can get to, and then we're going to have to leave you with some video footage of Andrew Carroll. I just wanted to get to this real quick because I did promise some insanity coming out of the UK, and that has to do with a London woman who parked her car outside her apartment. It was a legal place for her to park. She had been parking there for many, many years. Well, one day she woke up and her car was missing. She had no idea where her car was. She went to the city council to ask them. They said they had no idea where her car was. Well, about 3 weeks later, her car did show up in an impound lot, and they told her she needed to pay about $1,000 worth of fines to get it out. Well, she questioned, why was my car towed when it was legal to park there? Well, apparently the car was towed kind of in this limbo stage of whether it was legal to park there. What the crew actually did that was working on the road is lifted her car, painted lines that called it a no parking zone, lowered her car back down, and then towed it away. A little bit fishy. The other part of the story is they towed it a day before any of the regulations went into effect, and it was an illegal place to park. So can you imagine that? You're parked legally, the city lifts your car up, puts it back down, and then fines you. Well, so far she did get her car back. They offered her 150 pounds for her troubles, and well, you know, she's just annoyed. 150 pounds for not having a car for 3 weeks and all this legal battle she had to go through. Just insanity.
Hardly worth it. And it's not surprising that it's coming out of the UK. Not that it couldn't happen here, but the UK seems to have the more ridiculous nanny state stories.
Right. Well, we are out of time. We've got to get going, but we're going to leave you with some footage from Andrew Carroll's civil disobedience. We've covered this a lot. You can check out the archives for the full footage or log on to our website at freemindstv.com. Andrew Carroll, who decided to have some civil disobedience, hold a piece of marijuana in his hand, even though he doesn't actually use marijuana, and get arrested for it to show that people are being harmed in the drug war, not because they're using drugs, but because of the policy. We'll leave you with that footage. Until then, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a great night.
Woohoo! Free Sam and Andrew. Sergeant Major, he's actually like in charge of the whole.
I'm walking with Andrew Carroll of the, what do you call the event that we're at today?
I don't think it even has a name. It's so impromptu. But that's the great thing about New Hampshire and this movement is that we can get together on Sunday and decide to do a 4-hour walk on Tuesday and 15 people will actually show up. You won't do that anywhere else in the country, I guarantee you. So. And we're doing it for fun too, which is even crazier of us. Today we're marching to Westmoreland so I can turn myself into jail since I decided not to appeal my case and turn myself in, so for holding the plant. Which is of course the absurdity of this whole thing. Yeah.
Andrew, how do you feel about heading out to jail today? What are you, what are you feeling?
I suppose the reality of it hasn't quite hit me yet. I'm sure it will as soon as I'm in a cell, and then I'll realize where I really am. But I think I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing Sam. That's like the one thing that's on my mind right now is hopefully if they don't put me in solitary, I will be able to see Sam and have a nice long discussion with him. I think both of us, I think he'd be very pleased morally, and as would I, and it would be good for both of us to see each other in jail. I think that'd be great. So that's like my main goal right now is to hopefully get to talk to Sam.
So your plans for being in jail, you said you wouldn't eat, is that right?
Yes, I'm going to go on a hunger strike, kind of mainly just to support what Sam's doing and offer him a little support. I don't know if he knows I'm going to be in jail today. I don't know if anyone told him, but hopefully I get to see him and talk to him a little. I'm going to be going on a hunger strike for the 9 days that I will be in jail, and then it's not much, but it's the least I can do, I guess, since Sam's been on a hunger strike for 3 weeks now, I think, and he finally just started eating and lost a little weight, and he's in there for just as illegitimate a reason as I'm about to be in there, so we're both fighting the same cause. There's no reason for us to not make the same sacrifices. I think according to the stories I've heard from Sam and according to my own experience, cops don't want to put people in jail. They want to, I mean us at least. They know that we're nice people, they kind of feel bad about it, but they're just doing their job. And I think if we push it enough, we might actually get a few cops to break and admit that the whole system is just immoral and wrong and they don't even like their own jobs. Maybe that's a little bit of a high hope for me, but you never know. The 2 cops that arrested me on January 10th, they certainly didn't want to be there. You could tell by looks on their faces. And when they arrested me, they both didn't really want to put me in jail. They kind of just, and the superintendent ended up letting me go, so I think it's pretty clear that they don't want to put us in jail, but we're kind of forcing it to the point where, you know, we're getting it there to make them make a stand or not.
Andrew, a lot of people get their ideas of right and wrong from the government, what the laws are, but clearly you're making a statement here that directly conflicts with some existing laws. So where do you get your ideas about morality and what's right and wrong from?
I would say most of my morality comes from my parents, who raised me to have a respect for other people's body and their person and their property. I would say mainly morality comes from the family. For a lot of people it comes from religion, which is fine too. And for a lot of people, I guess, if you want to get your morality from the government, then what you're going to end up doing is exactly what the government does, and that is having little to no respect for private property, having little to no respect for individual rights, and having little to no respect for personal freedom. So, and then you end up with the system that we have today, which is geared heavily towards the destruction of all three of those things.
Now, you're doing some civil disobedience right now, so I think that sort of shows that you're not really for all that political in the system activism, but are you, or?
I am. I'm for whatever works, whatever's going to get us one step closer towards the goal that we have of a lack of coercion in regards to the state, whatever's going to get us closer to the goal of less people in jail for victimless crimes. You know, if we can get 10 people out of jail today, I feel like that's an achievement. And whether we have to achieve that through, you know, I'm not saying violence should be used, obviously. That would be wrong. But using the state using the government in the system activism to achieve goals like voting for a decriminalization bill, I don't feel that is immoral. I feel like that's very much a pro-liberty thing that we can do. Government is what it is, which is a tyrannical and institution based on coercion. Sorry.
So you think this will get the point across to other people?
I hope so. I mean, if this gets out to people who either, one, haven't heard this kind of message before, or two, have heard it and aren't in New Hampshire, then they'll understand that either, one, drug laws are bad, or two, they should be in New Hampshire, which they should be if they want to fight for freedom, because there's nowhere else in the world to do it right now, I don't think.
More so than I, perhaps. Oh, you look good. you might need a shave too, though. Flowers.
Hi, here we are at the jail, where Andrew Carroll's turning himself in today. We walked about 13 miles in about 4.5 hours. It was fun. Got a lot of honks too.
I'm here to turn myself into jail.
What's your name?
My name is Andrew Carroll.
Alright, let me check for your paperwork.
Thank you.
Oh, no paperwork. Go ahead.
Hey, great service.
Yeah.
Paperwork.
Why don't we just keep you in this hot, humid, isolated, locked room while we check for your
Do I get to hang out with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
that's cool with me.
Three's a crowds and 15's a what? Circus?
An orgy.
I'll get started.
No.
Actually, that's a bad joke to be making in jail.
Yeah, that's true.
Avoid the yes, the innuendo.